Emily Carter learned that some people do not leave when the love is gone. They leave the moment you become inconvenient. The rain was hitting the kitchen windows so hard it sounded like 1,000 tiny stones, but Emily could still hear the paper slide across the table. One clean sound. One final sound. Her hospital bracelet was still wrapped around her wrist, the plastic edges digging into her skin as she stared at the divorce papers in front of her. Across from her, Ryan Miller did not look angry. That was the cruelest part. He looked calm, almost relieved, like he had been waiting for the right excuse to walk away, and the hospital had finally handed him one. Emily's fingers tightened around the envelope from St. Augustine Hospital. Inside was the diagnosis that had made the room spin, the one that said her body might be fighting something serious, the one that suggested the family she had dreamed of might never happen. She had imagined coming home to her husband, crying into his chest, hearing him say they would face it together. Instead, Ryan pushed a pen toward her and said, "I can't build a future around hospital visits and bad news." Emily looked past him and saw Vanessa Blake standing near the hallway, wearing one of Ryan's oversized sweatshirts, her arms folded gently like she belonged there. Vanessa's mouth curved with sympathy, but her eyes were bright with victory. Emily turned back to Ryan. "You said for better or worse." Ryan exhaled like she was making this harder than necessary. That was before everything changed. Everything. One word, and 6 years of marriage became a burden he wanted removed from his life. Emily glanced at the second page of the hospital letter. There was a note about additional testing, a follow-up result still pending, a final confirmation that had not arrived yet. She pointed to it with a shaking hand. "They said they need another test." Ryan did not even look down. "I already spoke to people. We both know where this is going." Vanessa stepped closer and softly said, "Maybe it's better to let him go before you both suffer more." Emily almost laughed, because suffering was already sitting at the table, wearing her husband's face. She picked up the pen. Her hand trembled so badly her signature looked like it belonged to someone else. Ryan took the papers before the ink had fully dried. That night, Emily walked out with one suitcase, $43 in cash, and a diagnosis that had not yet been proven. What she did not know was that before sunrise, the second test result would land in the hospital system. And what Ryan did not know was that the woman he had just thrown away was not dying. She was about to become the one thing he would spend the rest of his life begging to get back. By 6 o'clock the next morning, Emily Carter was sitting on a wooden bench outside the downtown bus station with her suitcase between her feet and her phone at 3% battery. The rain had stopped, but the cold had stayed, sliding under her thin sweater and settling deep in her bones. She had spent the night at a cheap motel off Route 41, counting the bills in her wallet, reading the hospital letter over and over until the words blurred. Possible malignancy. Further testing required. Follow-up pending. Ryan had treated the first line like a life sentence and ignored the second like it did not exist. At 7:15, she tried to log into their joint bank account and found that the password had been changed. At 7:20, she called Ryan. He did not answer. At 7:23, a text appeared instead. "We need clean boundaries now. Please do not make this harder." Emily stared at the message until the screen went black. Clean boundaries. That was what he called cutting off the woman who had paid half the mortgage, helped build his consulting business from their spare bedroom, and spent 6 years believing his promises were stronger than fear. She walked 4 blocks to a small diner because it was warm inside and ordered the cheapest coffee on the menu. Her hand shook so badly that the waitress asked if she was all right. Emily smiled the polite smile people use when the truth would take too long. "Just a long night," she said. But it was more than one night. It was the strange emptiness after betrayal, when the world keeps moving like nothing happened, when cars still stop at red lights and people still complain about the weather while your entire life sits in a suitcase beside your knee. She opened her phone again after charging it near the restroom outlet and saw 3 missed calls, none from Ryan. One was from St. Augustine Hospital. Her breath caught. She called back immediately, but the automated system placed her on hold, then transferred her twice, then disconnected. By the time she reached a human voice, the woman on the line sounded rushed. "Miss Carter, we have a note that your follow-up result has been processed. You will need to come in and speak with a physician." Emily pressed the phone harder against her ear. "Can you tell me what it says?" "I am sorry, I cannot discuss that over the phone." "Is it worse?" There was a pause just long enough to scare her. Please come in as soon as you are able. Emily looked down at the suitcase, at the coffee she could barely swallow, at the hospital bracelet she had forgotten to remove. If Ryan had been beside her, maybe that sentence would have felt survivable. Alone, it felt like a door opening beneath her feet. By noon, Emily was at St. Augustine Hospital, standing under fluorescent lights that made everyone look tired. The lobby smelled like disinfectant, coffee, and wet coats. She signed her name at the front desk with the same hand that had signed away her marriage, then waited in a plastic chair beneath a television playing morning news with the volume too low to understand. Every time a nurse stepped into the waiting area, Emily looked up. Every time someone else's name was called, her stomach tightened. 40 minutes passed, then 60, then 90. Her phone buzzed once with a message from an unknown number. It was a photo. Her own front porch. 2 cardboard boxes. The message underneath read, Ryan asked me to pack what you forgot. Hope you find somewhere peaceful to recover. Vanessa. Emily felt the room tilt. Not because of the message alone, but because of the cruelty dressed up as kindness. Vanessa had touched her clothes, her books, the blue ceramic mug Emily's mother had given her. Maybe even the small framed ultrasound picture Emily had once bought as a joke after she and Ryan started trying for a baby. She stood too quickly. The sound in the lobby stretched thin, then faded, as if someone had lowered the volume on the world. She reached for the arm of the chair, missed it, and stumbled toward the hallway. A nurse called out, Ma'am, are you okay? Emily tried to answer, but her lips felt numb. She made it 3 more steps before the floor seemed to rise toward her. She did not hit it. A firm hand caught her elbow, then another steadied her shoulder. Sit down, a man's voice said. Not gentle, not cruel, commanding. Emily blinked and found herself looking at a white coat, a dark tie, and a hospital badge that read Nathan Hayes, MD, cardiothoracic surgery. He was tall, pale-skinned, with neatly combed dark blonde hair and eyes the color of winter glass. His expression was unreadable, the kind of face that made people lower their voices without knowing why. A younger nurse hurried over. Dr. Hayes, she is here for internal medicine. I can get a wheelchair. Then get one, he said, without taking his eyes off Emily. And check her blood pressure. Emily tried to pull away. I am fine. I just stood up too fast. People who are fine do not faint in hospital corridors. I did not faint. You were negotiating with the floor. The nurse hid a smile. Emily would have laughed if she had not been so exhausted. Minutes later, she was in an exam room with a blood pressure cuff around her arm and a paper cup of water in her hand. Dr. Hayes stood near the computer, reading her chart with a stillness that made the room feel smaller. He clicked once, then again. His jaw tightened. Who gave you the original diagnosis? Emily swallowed. Dr. Malcolm Pierce. He said the first test was concerning and that we needed to prepare for the possibility of aggressive treatment. That is not what this says. Emily froze. What do you mean? He did not answer right away. He opened another tab, then another, comparing dates, values, notes, signatures. His silence was worse than alarm. Dr. Hayes, Emily said, please just tell me. Am I dying? For the first time, his expression changed. Not softened exactly, but shifted, as if the question had struck something old behind his eyes. No physician should have let you believe that without confirmation. Emily gripped the edge of the exam table. That is not an answer. Your follow-up result does not support the original conclusion. The words entered the room slowly, too big for her to understand at first. So it was wrong? I am saying the first interpretation was, at minimum, incomplete, possibly incorrect. I need more information before I use stronger language. Emily stared at him. My husband divorced me last night because of that diagnosis. Nathan's fingers stopped above the keyboard. He looked at the hospital bracelet on her wrist, then at the pale mark where her wedding ring had been. He divorced you before the final result came back? He said he already knew where it was going. Nathan turned back to the screen, but not before Emily saw the flash of anger cross his face, quiet and controlled. People who say that usually know less than they think. He printed several pages, signed one form, and handed it to the nurse. Repeat labs. Full panel. Imaging review. And I want the original slides pulled from pathology. The nurse hesitated. Dr. Hayes, Dr. Pierce is listed as the attending on the initial review. I can read. The room went silent. The nurse left quickly. Emily watched Nathan as he continued working. Why are you doing all of this? I am not even your patient. You collapsed in front of me. That made you my problem. That is a terrible bedside manner. It is still better than false reassurance. She looked down, too tired to argue. I do not have insurance anymore. Ryan probably removed me this morning. Nathan's hands paused again. We will deal with billing later. You do not understand. I do not have anywhere to go. I do not have access to my accounts. I do not even know if I can afford the tests you just ordered. Miss Carter. His voice cut through her panic, not loudly, but firmly enough to stop it from spreading. Right now, your job is to breathe, drink the water, and let the hospital figure out what happened to your file. Emily hated that a stranger's certainty made her feel safer than her husband's promises ever had. She took a sip of water, though her throat ached. Why does it sound like you think something happened to my file? Nathan looked at the computer screen again, where Dr. Malcolm Pierce's name sat beneath the first report like a stain. Because your symptoms, your numbers, and his conclusion do not belong in the same sentence. He leaned closer to the monitor, reading the timestamp on the first report. Then he opened a restricted note and went completely still. Emily noticed the change immediately. His face did not move, but the air around him did. What is it? She asked. Nathan closed the note too quickly. Nothing confirmed. That is what doctors say when it is something. He turned to her, and for the first time, Emily saw something beneath the coldness that looked almost like guilt. Several years ago, a patient was harmed because too many people trusted a report they should have questioned. Emily waited, but he did not continue. Was it Dr. Pierce? Nathan's silence answered before his mouth did. I am not discussing hospital history with you. But you knew his name. Everyone knows his name. That is not the same thing. Nathan removed his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. It was the first human gesture she had seen from him. Then his wall returned. You need rest. I need the truth. Most people say that until the truth starts costing them. Emily's eyes filled, but she refused to cry in front of him. She had already cried in a motel bathroom with a towel pressed against her mouth so the people next door would not hear. She had cried while signing papers. She had cried when Vanessa sent the photo of her life boxed up like leftovers. She had no tears left to donate to a doctor who spoke like every sentence had been sterilized. The truth already cost me my marriage, she said. So whatever it is, I would rather know. Nathan looked at her for a long moment. Then he turned the monitor slightly, not enough for her to read everything, but enough for her to see 2 dates circled in red. Your second sample was processed before your husband gave you divorce papers. Emily's breath caught. That is impossible. The hospital called me this morning. The hospital called you this morning because someone released the result this morning. That is not the same as when it was completed. A cold feeling moved through her that had nothing to do with the weather. Are you saying someone held it? I am saying I am going to find out why it was not sent when it should have been. Emily thought of Ryan saying, I already spoke to people. She thought of Vanessa standing in the hallway, smiling like she had been waiting for a curtain to rise. She thought of Dr. Pierce telling her, with practiced sympathy, that some women had to accept a different kind of future. Her hands curled around the paper cup until the rim bent. If Ryan knew, Nathan's voice was sharp. Do not finish that sentence without evidence. You just said the result was delayed. I said the result was not released on time. That points to a process failure. It does not prove intent. And if it was intent... He looked back at Dr. Pierce's name. Then someone made a very serious mistake choosing you. The nurse returned with forms and a wheelchair, but Nathan took the folder from her before she could speak. Admit her for observation under internal medicine, with consults pending. Emily looked up. Admit me? I cannot stay here. You nearly fainted, you are under extreme stress, and your medical file may be compromised. You can stay. Who authorized that? I did. You are a surgeon. I noticed. Do you always take over cases that are not yours? Nathan held her gaze. Only when someone else mishandles them first. The words settled between them, heavy and strangely protective. For the first time since Ryan slid the papers across the table, Emily felt the smallest crack of solid ground under her feet. Not comfort, not happiness, just the possibility that she was not crazy, not doomed, not disposable. A transport aide arrived to take her upstairs. As the wheelchair turned toward the elevator, Emily glanced back. Nathan was still at the computer, already making a call. His voice carried just before the doors opened. This is Dr. Hayes. Pull every Carter file entry signed by Pierce in the last 72 hours. No, not tomorrow. Now. Emily's heart began to pound for a different reason. Somewhere inside the hospital system, the truth had existed before her marriage ended. Someone had seen it. Someone had delayed it. And the cold doctor everyone seemed afraid of had just opened the one file they clearly hoped would stay buried. Emily did not sleep that night so much as drift in and out of a gray fog, waking every time footsteps passed her hospital room or a cart rattled down the hallway. St. Augustine was quieter after midnight, but not peaceful. Machines hummed behind closed doors. Nurses spoke in low voices. Somewhere far away, an elevator chimed again and again, carrying strangers toward news that would change their lives. Emily lay beneath a thin white blanket, staring at the ceiling, wondering how many people in that building were waiting for answers they were afraid to hear. Her phone sat on the tray beside her bed, charging with a borrowed cable from a nurse named Monica, who had been kind enough not to ask why Emily flinched every time the screen lit up. Ryan had not called. That should not have surprised her, but it did. Some part of her still expected him to wake up, realize what he had done, and rush through the hospital doors with wet hair and regret in his eyes. Instead, at 1:15 in the morning, a message arrived from Vanessa. Ryan needs space. Please respect that. Emily stared at those 4 words until they stopped looking like English. Ryan needs space. As if Emily had crowded him by getting sick. As if her fear had taken up too much room in his comfortable life. As if he were the one lying in a hospital bed with a divorce document in a plastic bag beside her shoes. She turned the phone face down and pressed her palm over her eyes. She would not cry. Not there. Not when the wall between her room and the hallway was so thin that strangers could hear weakness. At 2:30, the door opened softly. Emily turned her head, expecting a nurse, but Dr. Nathan Hayes stepped inside, holding a paper cup of coffee and a folder so thick it bent slightly in his hand. He was still wearing the same white coat from earlier, though his tie had been loosened and his sleeves were rolled to his forearms. He looked like a man who had not gone home and had no intention of pretending otherwise. You should be sleeping, he said. Emily gave a tired laugh, without humor. That seems to be popular advice from people who are not living my life. Nathan looked at the untouched dinner tray near the window. You should also be eating. Do you have a third criticism? Or is this a 2-item visit? He set the folder on the counter. Your repeat blood work came back stable. Your imaging review does not support Dr. Pierce's initial interpretation. I am waiting on pathology confirmation, but nothing I have seen tonight suggests the emergency he implied. Emily slowly pushed herself upright. So he was wrong. He was careless. That sounds like a polite hospital word. It is the word I can use before the internal review is complete. She searched his face for comfort and found none, but his lack of softness was starting to feel different from Ryan's. Ryan's coldness had been absence. Nathan's was control, the kind that stood between chaos and the person about to be swallowed by it. Was the second test clear? She asked. Nathan glanced at the folder. It was reassuring enough that you should never have been allowed to spend last night believing your life was over. Emily gripped the blanket. Ryan said he spoke to people. Nathan's eyes lifted. Who? He did not say. He just said he knew where this was going. Did Dr. Pierce speak with your husband directly? I do not know. Ryan handled a lot of calls because I was scared. The admission made her feel foolish, but Nathan did not react like she was. He simply took out a pen and wrote something down. Do you consent to the hospital auditing all communications connected to your case? Emily hesitated. What does that mean? It means if someone accessed, delayed, forwarded, discussed, or altered information connected to your result, there may be a record. And if there is not? Nathan's jaw tightened. Then someone wanted there not to be. A chill moved through her. Why would anyone do that to me? I am nobody. He was quiet for a moment, then said, that is usually why people think they can get away with it. Emily looked toward the window. The city beyond the glass was still dark, dotted with traffic lights and apartment windows. Somewhere out there was the house she had painted with Ryan one summer, the porch where they had planned to put a swing, the kitchen table where he had decided she was no longer worth choosing. I cannot go back there, she whispered. To the house. To any of it. Nathan followed her gaze. Do you have family nearby? My mother passed away 3 years ago. My father lives in Arizona with his new wife. We talk on holidays. Friends. Emily almost said yes, then stopped. Most of their friends were couple friends, dinner party friends, people who liked Ryan's confidence and Vanessa's charm. People who would say they did not want to take sides while quietly choosing the side with the bigger house and easier story. Not the kind you call at 3 in the morning with a suitcase, she said. Nathan did not offer sympathy. Somehow that made it easier to continue. Ryan changed the bank password. Vanessa packed boxes and left them outside. I have $43, one suitcase, and no idea where I am supposed to be when you discharge me. Nathan looked at her for a long moment. Then he picked up the folder. You are not being discharged today. You cannot keep me here just because my life is a mess. No, I can keep you here because you collapsed, you are under medical review, and your case has administrative irregularities. That sounds convenient. It is accurate. And after that, he looked away first, which surprised her. There is a residence building 2 blocks from here. Short-term apartments for visiting fellows and staff on emergency rotation. One unit is empty because the assigned resident transferred to Denver. Emily stared at him. Why are you telling me this? Because it has a bed, a lock, and no connection to your ex-husband. I cannot afford that. It is already paid through the month. By who? The hospital. That sounds like another polite word. Nathan's expression did not change. It is a practical solution. Dr. Hayes, I am not your responsibility. I am aware. Then why are you acting like I am? For the first time, his cold composure cracked just enough for something older and sharper to show. He looked toward the hallway, where the hospital lights washed everything in pale blue. Because the last time I assumed someone else would do the right thing, a woman trusted the wrong report and went home thinking she had more time than she did. Emily stopped breathing for a second. Nathan's voice stayed even, but the room seemed to understand the weight of what he had not said. Was she your patient? Emily asked. He did not answer right away. She was my sister. The words were quiet, almost flat, but they changed everything. Emily saw him differently then, not as the cold doctor who frightened nurses and corrected charts like they were crimes, but as a man who had built a wall around a wound and called it professionalism. I am sorry, she said. Do. Not be. It does not help. The reply should have sounded rude. Instead, it sounded honest. He turned back to the counter and slid a form toward her. This allows patient advocacy to help with temporary housing and insurance transition. Signing it does not obligate you to anything. Emily took the pen, then paused. Ryan used to handle forms like this. Then it is time you knew what you were signing. He did not say it warmly. He said it like a fact, but the fact landed deeper than comfort. Emily read every line. Nathan waited without rushing her. When she signed, her name looked steadier than it had on the divorce papers. By morning, the hospital had become a different kind of battlefield. A patient advocate named Linda arrived with a tablet and a calm voice, explaining emergency coverage, legal aid referrals, and how to document financial lockout after a separation. Emily listened carefully, writing notes on a hospital notepad because her life had become something that needed case numbers. At 10:40, Ryan finally called. Emily stared at his name until Linda quietly asked, "Do you want privacy?" Emily shook her head. Her finger hovered over decline, but some part of her needed to hear his voice, needed to know whether there was still a human being behind what he had done. She answered, "Emily," Ryan said, and for one painful second he sounded familiar. Then the familiar disappeared. "Vanessa said you were still at the hospital." Emily closed her eyes. "That is what concerns you. That Vanessa knows where I am. Do not start. You left me at a motel with no money and changed the bank password. I froze the account because emotions are high and I did not want impulsive decisions." Emily looked at Linda, who gave nothing away, but her pen moved quickly across the page. "Impulsive decisions? You filed for divorce before my final test result came back." There was a pause. Too long. The diagnosis was serious. The diagnosis was not final. "Emily, you heard Dr. Pierce. You know what he implied. Did you speak to him after my appointment?" Silence again. This time, Emily sat straighter. "Ryan." His voice lowered. "I made calls because I was trying to understand what my future looked like." My future, not our future. The last thread snapped so quietly Emily almost missed it. "And what did Vanessa tell you your future should look like?" Ryan sighed. "This obsession with Vanessa is not healthy. She packed my belongings. She was trying to help. She sent me a photograph of boxes on my porch while I was waiting to find out whether I was dying." Ryan did not respond. Maybe because even he could hear how ugly it sounded when spoken out loud. Then his tone changed, becoming careful, almost legal. Listen to me. I think it is best if you do not make accusations about the hospital or Dr. Pierce. You are under stress. People might misunderstand your behavior. Emily felt the warning beneath the concern. Across the room, Nathan had appeared in the open doorway. She had not heard him arrive. His face was unreadable, but his eyes were fixed on the phone in her hand. Emily spoke slowly. Are you telling me not to ask why my result was delayed? Ryan's voice hardened. I am telling you not to embarrass yourself. The old Emily might have apologized. The old Emily might have folded herself smaller to keep the peace. But the old Emily had signed divorce papers in a storm, and something had been left behind in that kitchen besides a marriage. Goodbye, Ryan, she said, and ended the call. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Linda finished writing. Nathan stepped inside. Do not speak with him again without documenting it. Emily looked down at the silent phone. He knew something. Maybe. You heard him. I heard a man afraid of what you might find. Linda left to make calls, and Nathan checked Emily's vitals with the briskness of someone pretending the conversation had not mattered. You are improving, he said. I do not feel improved. That is not a medical measurement. Do you ever say anything comforting? Yes. Emily waited. He wrapped the blood pressure cuff with perfect precision. Your blood pressure is better. Despite everything, she smiled. It was small but real. Nathan noticed and immediately looked at the monitor as if numbers were safer than faces. Later that afternoon, Monica brought Emily a paper bag from the hospital cafeteria with soup, crackers, and an apple. Dr. Hayes said you skipped breakfast, she said. Emily looked toward the door. Dr. Hayes monitors meals now. Monica smiled. Dr. Hayes monitors everything. It is annoying until it saves you. The soup was plain, but warm. Emily ate half of it, then all of it, surprised by how hungry she was. By evening, patient advocacy confirmed the apartment. Nathan handed her a key in a small envelope after signing her discharge papers for the following day. You will stay there until your follow-up review is complete. Emily took the envelope carefully. Is that an order? A recommendation with better judgment than your alternatives. And the rules. He looked confused. Rules. People like you always have rules. Something almost like amusement crossed his face and vanished. Do not miss appointments. Do not ignore symptoms. Do not answer calls from your ex-husband unless you are ready to record the details afterward. Do not sleep in hospital waiting rooms. That last one feels personal. It is. Emily ran her thumb over the envelope. A key. A small object, but it felt heavier than the suitcase Ryan had left her with. Thank you, she said. Nathan's posture stiffened slightly, as if gratitude made him uncomfortable. It is temporary. I know. It is not charity. I know. He turned to leave, then stopped at the door. Miss Carter. Emily looked up. The pathology department found a discrepancy in the original report log. Her heart jumped. What kind of discrepancy? A manual hold was placed on your follow-up result after it was processed. By Dr. Pierce? Nathan's silence returned, sharp as a locked drawer. The access trail is incomplete. What does that mean? It means someone knew enough to hide their name. Emily felt the room narrow around her. Could Ryan have done that? Not without help from inside. The answer was worse than yes. Nathan opened the door, but his voice stopped her before he left. Tomorrow, when you walk out of here, you may feel like you have lost your home, your marriage, and your future. That is not clinically accurate. Emily blinked. Clinically accurate. You lost people who were willing to abandon you before they had the facts. That is different. Then he was gone, leaving Emily alone with the envelope, the folded discharge papers, and the first strange feeling of safety she had known in days. The next morning, she stepped out of St. Augustine Hospital into bright winter sunlight, her suitcase rolling behind her, the key to the residence building in her coat pocket. 2 blocks away waited a small apartment she had never seen. Behind her, somewhere inside the hospital, Nathan Hayes was pulling apart the lie that had ruined her marriage. And across town, Ryan Miller was about to learn that the woman he thought he had pushed out quietly had found someone far more dangerous than a lawyer. She had found a doctor who hated buried truths. The apartment 2 blocks from St. Augustine Hospital was smaller than Emily expected, but the moment the door locked behind her, she leaned against it and breathed like she had reached land after days underwater. There was a narrow bed with a gray blanket, A small kitchen with one saucepan, a square table by the window, and a view of the parking garage across the street. It was not home. It was not warm in the way her old house had been warm, with framed vacation photos and mismatched coffee mugs and the faint smell of lemon cleaner on Sunday mornings. But it had a lock Ryan did not control, a key Vanessa had never touched, and silence that belonged only to Emily. For the first hour, she did nothing. She sat on the edge of the bed with her coat still on and listened to the heater click. Then her phone buzzed. Ryan again. She did not answer. He called twice more, then sent a message. We need to talk before this gets out of hand. Emily read it once, then placed the phone face down on the table the way she had learned to place pain somewhere outside her body. At 5:30 that evening, someone knocked. Her whole body tightened before she reached the door. Through the peephole, she saw Dr. Nathan Hayes standing in the hallway, holding a brown grocery bag in one hand and a white pharmacy bag in the other. Emily opened the door only halfway. Do you make house calls for every patient? Or am I receiving special customer service? Nathan's eyes moved over her face, then past her into the apartment, checking the space with the quiet habit of someone who trusted details more than words. You were discharged 6 hours ago. You have not picked up your prescriptions. I was going to. The pharmacy closes at 6. Then I was going to be disappointed at 6:01. He handed her the bags. Your medication. Soup. Crackers. Ginger tea. Bananas. Plain oatmeal. Emily looked inside. This is the most depressing grocery list I have ever seen. It is medically reasonable. That may be worse. He glanced at the table, where her phone buzzed again. Ryan's name flashed across the screen before it went dark. Nathan noticed, but did not comment. That made it harder somehow. Emily set the bags down and said, He keeps calling. Do you want to speak to him? No, then do not. That sounds easy when you say it. Most correct decisions sound easy. They are only difficult because someone benefits from you not making them. Emily looked at him, surprised by how deeply that landed. Before she could answer, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was not Ryan. It was an email notification from an attorney she had never contacted. Subject line, Notice regarding marital residence access. Emily opened it with cold fingers. The message was formal, brief, and devastating. Ryan was claiming she had voluntarily vacated the residence and requesting that she schedule any retrieval of remaining personal property through his legal representative. Her chest tightened. He is trying to make it look like I abandoned the house. Nathan set his jaw. Forward that to patient advocacy and the legal aid contact Linda gave you. I have not even had time to understand my medical results, and he is already building a case. That is why you need one of your own. Emily laughed once, bitterly. With what money? Nathan did not answer immediately. Instead, he stepped back into the hallway as if leaving would make the conversation less personal. There are nonprofit legal clinics that handle financial control during separation. Linda marked 3 of them in your packet. Emily hated that he was right. She hated that Ryan was moving fast. She hated that every hour brought a new document, a new thread, a new reminder that 6 years of marriage could turn into a paperwork war overnight. Why is he doing this? She whispered. He already left. He got what he wanted. Nathan's face was still, but his voice lowered. No, he got what he thought he wanted before the facts changed. Now he is trying to control what the facts can cost him. The words hung in the small apartment like a warning. That night, Emily slept better than she expected, but morning brought a new kind of trouble. At 8:20, she arrived at St. Augustine for her follow-up appointment and found 2 hospital administrators waiting outside the consultation room with careful smiles. Nathan was not there. The older administrator introduced herself as Carol Whitman from Risk Management. The younger man said almost nothing, only held a tablet against his chest like a shield. Carol's voice was smooth enough to make Emily distrusted immediately. Miss Carter, we understand there has been some confusion regarding your test results. We would like to reassure you that St. Augustine takes patient communication very seriously. Emily sat down slowly. Was my result delayed? Carol smiled without answering. Medical interpretation can be complex. That is not what I asked. The younger man shifted. Carol continued. At this stage, it would be best to avoid drawing conclusions. Stress can sometimes affect how patients remember conversations. Emily felt heat rise in her face. There it was again. The same shape as Ryan's warning. The same polite suggestion that her reality was unreliable. I remember being told I might be seriously ill. I remember being told to prepare for aggressive treatment. I remember signing divorce papers before anyone called me with the follow-up. Carol folded her hands. We are sorry you are experiencing personal difficulties. Emily stared at her. Personal difficulties. Such clean words for a husband leaving, a bank account locked, a life boxed on a porch, and a hospital result hidden behind someone else's access trail. The door opened before Emily could respond. Nathan walked in wearing a dark suit instead of his white coat, and the entire mood of the room changed. Carol's smile thinned. Dr. Hayes, this is an administrative meeting. It is a medical review involving my consult. You are not the attending physician. No, I am the physician who caught the discrepancy. He placed a folder on the table, sat beside Emily without asking permission, and looked directly at Carol. Continue. Emily had never heard one word sound so much like a locked door. Carol cleared her throat. We were explaining that Miss Carter should avoid premature claims. Nathan opened the folder. Her follow-up sample was processed at 2:46 in the afternoon on Tuesday. A manual hold was placed at 3:12. The result was released the next morning at 8:58 only after she called the hospital herself. The initial report contained language that was not supported by the imaging review. Which part is premature? The younger. Administrator looked down at his tablet. Carol's face tightened. Internal access logs are still being evaluated. Then evaluate them faster. Dr. Hayes. A patient made life-altering decisions after receiving incomplete information from this hospital. Her spouse appears to have known enough to act before she was properly informed. And Dr. Pierce's name appears on the interpretation that started it. Emily turned toward him. Her spouse appears to have known enough to act. Hearing it spoken aloud made the room tilt again, but this time she did not collapse. This time, Nathan was sitting between her and the people trying to soften the truth until it disappeared. Carol closed her folder. We will schedule a formal review. Nathan said, today. That may not be possible. Then I will request an external review. Silence dropped hard. Carol looked at Emily now, truly looked at her, as if only just realizing she was not alone. The meeting ended 7 minutes later with promises, phone numbers, and a very different tone. In the hallway, Emily stopped walking. You did not have to do that. Nathan kept moving, so she followed. Yes, I did. Why? He pressed the elevator button. Because they were preparing to make you doubt yourself. And you care because of your sister. The elevator doors opened, but he did not step inside. For a moment, the hospital noise moved around them. Carts, footsteps, distant voices, ordinary life continuing beside extraordinary damage. My sister trusted people who spoke calmly while hiding mistakes, he said. By the time I understood that, there was nothing left to protect. Emily's anger softened into something more fragile. Nathan. He looked at her then, and it was the first time she had said his first name. Neither of them moved. Then her phone rang. Ryan. The spell broke. Emily almost declined, but Nathan said, answer it on speaker. Her pulse jumped. What? You need to know what he wants. And he needs to know you are not isolated. Emily answered with shaking fingers and tapped speaker. What do you want, Ryan? His voice came through tight and impatient. Why is the hospital calling attorneys? Emily's eyes lifted to Nathan's. I do not know. Why are you asking me? Because this can become ugly very fast, and I am trying to protect you. Nathan's expression did not change, but his eyes sharpened. Emily said, protect me from what? Ryan lowered his voice. From making claims you cannot prove. From looking unstable. From letting some doctor convince you that everyone is against you. Emily felt Nathan go still beside her. Some doctor. Ryan continued. Vanessa saw you leaving the hospital residence building this morning. People are already talking. You need to be careful about how this looks. There it was. Not concern. Surveillance. Emily's hand tightened around the phone. Vanessa is watching where I stay. Ryan paused. That is not the point. Nathan reached out, not touching Emily, only holding his palm open. She understood and handed him the phone. His voice was calm enough to be frightening. Mr. Miller, this is Dr. Nathan Hayes. Miss Carter will not be discussing her medical case, housing, or legal position with you by phone again. Ryan was silent for half a second. Who gave you the right to speak for my wife? Emily's heart slammed against her ribs. My wife. After divorce papers. After boxes on the porch. After freezing the account. Nathan looked at Emily, not Ryan, when he answered. You gave up that word when you used her diagnosis as an exit. The call ended from Ryan's side. Emily stood frozen, staring at the black screen. She expected Nathan to hand the phone back and walk away behind his wall of professional distance. Instead, he said quietly, "He will escalate. I know. He may challenge your stability, your housing, even your right to access certain records. I know. There is one way to make it harder for him to isolate you legally." Emily looked up slowly. Something in his tone had changed. It was not warm. It was not romantic. It was practical, deliberate, and terrifying. "What way?" Nathan looked down the corridor, then back at her. "You need someone with recognized legal standing. Someone who can be contacted in a medical emergency, receive authorized updates, and challenge interference quickly. A healthcare proxy? Not strong enough if he pushes harder." Emily's mouth went dry. "Then what are you saying?" Nathan held her gaze like he was preparing to walk into a storm and had already accepted the weather. "I am saying there is a civil courthouse 8 blocks from here. And if Ryan Miller wants to keep treating you like a woman with no one standing beside her, we can correct that today." Emily stared at him, unable to speak. "Are you asking me to marry you?" she whispered. Nathan's face remained unreadable, but his voice was steady. "I am offering you a shield. Nothing more. No expectations. No performance. No romance. A legal arrangement until your case is safe and your life is yours again." It should have sounded insane. It should have made her step back. But Emily thought of Ryan's voice saying "my wife" like ownership. She thought of Vanessa watching the residence building. She thought of Carol Whitman telling her stress could affect memory. She thought of every door closing because people believed she was alone. Then she looked at Nathan Hayes, the cold doctor who had brought oatmeal because she forgot to eat, who had found the hidden hold on her result, who had sat beside her when the hospital tried to bury the truth under polite words. "Why would you risk your reputation for me?" she asked. Nathan's answer came without hesitation. "Because your life was damaged by people protecting theirs." By 3 o'clock that afternoon, Emily Carter stood beside Nathan Hayes at the county courthouse with borrowed documents in her purse and no flowers, no music, no white dress, no smiling guests. The clerk behind the glass asked if they understood the legal seriousness of the marriage. Nathan said yes. Emily looked at the man beside her, at his straight posture and impossible calm, and realized he had not once promised to save her. He had simply kept showing up where others had disappeared. When the clerk pronounced them married, Nathan did not kiss her. He only took a plain silver ring from his coat pocket and placed it in her palm. "You do not have to wear it unless it helps," he said. Emily closed her fingers around it. For the first time since the rain-soaked kitchen, she did not feel discarded. She felt defended. And across town, when Ryan Miller received the courthouse notification that his ex-wife had become Mrs. Nathan Hayes, he finally understood that Emily had not just survived the divorce. She had stepped behind a wall he could not break. The courthouse notification reached Ryan before Emily had even returned to the hospital residence, and by sunset his messages had changed from cold warnings to sharp disbelief. "You married him? Is this a joke?" Emily sat at the small kitchen table in the apartment, the plain silver ring resting beside a bowl of oatmeal Nathan had insisted she eat before taking her evening medication. The ring looked almost too simple to carry so much weight. It was not a symbol of romance, not yet. It was a boundary. It was proof that Ryan could no longer call every door in her life and expect it to open. Nathan stood near the window with his phone pressed to his ear, speaking to a hospital attorney in a voice so calm it made every sentence sound final. "Miss Carter is now Mrs. Hayes for legal purposes, and all medical communication goes through the authorization form she signed this afternoon. Any access request from Ryan Miller is to be denied unless she approves it in writing." Emily looked down at the ring again. Mrs. Hayes. The name felt unfamiliar, like a coat borrowed from someone braver. When Nathan ended the call, she said, "You do not have to keep saying it like that." "Like what?" "Like I am really your wife." His expression did not change. "Legally, you are." "That is not what I meant." For the first time, Nathan seemed unsure what to do with the space between them. He glanced at the soup on the counter, the neatly arranged medication bottles, the hospital packet with sticky notes marking every important page. "You should rest." Emily almost smiled. "That is your answer to everything. It works more often than panic." But panic did not leave just because someone named it. Over the next 2 weeks, Emily learned that a life could collapse loudly and rebuild quietly. Ryan's attorney sent letters. Legal aid responded. The hospital opened a formal review. Dr. Malcolm Pierce was placed on administrative leave pending investigation, though nobody said those words directly to Emily. Carol Whitman from Risk Management became suddenly polite, almost warm, which Emily trusted even less. Vanessa stopped texting, but Emily saw her once across the street from the residence building, sitting in Ryan's black sedan with sunglasses on despite the cloudy sky. Nathan did not react when Emily told him. He simply arranged for building security to escort residents after dark and told Emily to vary the times she went outside. "You make everything sound like a procedure," she said. "Procedures exist because trust is not a plan." The apartment changed slowly. A second mug appeared in the cabinet because Nathan came by early with coffee before rounds. A soft blue blanket appeared on the bed because he noticed she slept under her coat one afternoon. A stack of medical journal articles disappeared from the table after Emily joked that they made the room feel like a punishment. Nathan did not move in, not exactly. He kept his own apartment across town, maintained careful distance, and never stayed later than necessary. But he was there in the ways that started to matter. When Emily forgot to eat, food appeared. When Ryan sent another letter, Nathan read only the parts she asked him to read. When the hospital called, he sat silently beside her and let her answer for herself. He never tried to own her gratitude. He never asked for trust. He behaved like trust was something he had to earn in inches. Then, on a Thursday morning in late February, Emily woke before sunrise with a strange wave of dizziness that felt different from the weakness she had known before. She sat up slowly, one hand pressed to her stomach, waiting for it to pass. It did, then returned when she stood. At first, she blamed stress. Stress had become the answer to everything people did not want to examine. But by noon, the smell of coffee from the nurse's station made her so nauseated that she had to turn away from the cup Nathan handed her. He noticed immediately. "You are pale. That is because your coffee smells like burned tires. You drank it yesterday." Yesterday it had not personally offended me. Nathan studied her with the focus that made other doctors nervous. "Any pain?" "No. Fever?" "No. Lightheaded?" "A little." "You should be evaluated." Emily groaned. "I am already in a hospital." "That does not mean every odd feeling needs a full investigation." "Correct. This one does." An hour later, Emily sat in an exam room with Monica, the nurse, who was trying very hard not to smile while asking routine questions. Emily answered automatically until Monica paused at one of them. "Is there any chance you could be pregnant?" Emily almost laughed. "No." Nathan, who had been reading her chart near the door, looked up. Monica stayed professional. "No chance at all." Emily's answer came slower this time. She thought of the final months of her marriage, when she and Ryan had still been trying for a baby because she had not yet understood that he was already emotionally packing his bags. She thought of the diagnosis that had stolen even the possibility from her mind. "I was told I probably could not have children," she said. Nathan's face tightened slightly, not at her, but at the memory of the report. Monica's voice softened. "Probably is not the same as impossible." The room became very quiet. Emily looked at Nathan, then away. "Do the test." The waiting felt longer than any waiting she had done before, because this time the fear was tangled with something she did not dare name. Emily sat on the edge of the exam table, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles turned white. Nathan stood by the counter, giving her space, but she could feel his attention on every breath she took. "You do not have to stay," she said. "I am your authorized medical contact." That is a very romantic sentence. It was not intended to be. "I know. That is why it sounded like you." Something almost like a smile touched his mouth, then vanished when Monica returned. The nurse held a tablet in both hands, and her expression had changed. It was careful, but not grim. Emily stopped breathing before anyone spoke. Monica said, "The test is positive." For a moment, Emily did not understand. The word positive belonged to disease, to warnings, to bad phone calls. Then it shifted shape. Positive. Pregnant. Alive. Possible. Her hand moved to her stomach. "That cannot be right." Monica's eyes warmed. "We ran it twice." Emily looked at Nathan. His face had gone completely still. "But the diagnosis," she whispered. Nathan's voice was low. The diagnosis was wrong. The sentence broke something open in her. Not grief exactly. Not joy either. Something larger, too bright, and too painful to hold. Emily covered her mouth, and the first tear slipped before she could stop it. Ryan left because he thought I could not give him a family. Nathan's jaw tightened. Ryan left because he chose himself when you needed him. Monica ordered an ultrasound to confirm timing, and Emily moved through the next hour like someone walking through deep water. Pregnant. The word repeated with every step. Pregnant in the same body she had been told to distrust. Pregnant after being discarded like a future that had already failed. Pregnant while married on paper. To a man who had never touched her life carelessly. In the ultrasound room, the lights were dim, and the monitor glowed blue-gray against the wall. Emily lay still, her heart pounding so hard she was sure the technician could hear it. Nathan remained near the door, professional distance intact, until Emily turned her head and said, "Please do not stand so far away." He came to her side without a word. The technician moved the probe gently, eyes on the screen. A few seconds passed. Then a soft, rapid sound filled the room. Emily's eyes flew open. "Is that?" The technician smiled. "That is a heartbeat." Emily pressed her fingers to her lips. The sound was tiny, fast, impossible. Then the technician's smile widened in a way that made Nathan lean closer to the screen. "And here is the second one." Emily turned her head sharply. "The second what?" The technician adjusted the image. "There are 2 heartbeats." The room disappeared. The hospital, the divorce, the lies, the boxes on the porch. For one suspended second, there was only that sound, 2 quick rhythms answering each other in the dark. Emily began to cry openly then, not with the broken sobs of the motel bathroom, but with the stunned tears of someone who had been told her life was closing and suddenly found 2 doors opening at once. Nathan did not speak. He stared at the monitor, his cold expression undone in a way Emily had never seen. His hand rested on the rail of the exam table, close to hers but not touching. Then, carefully, as if asking permission without words, he turned his palm upward. Emily placed her hand in his. His fingers closed around hers, steady and warm. "Twins," she whispered. Nathan nodded once, but his voice took a moment to arrive. "Yes. I do not know how to feel. You do not have to decide that today. Ryan will find out. Not from this hospital. He will say they are his." Nathan looked at her then, and something protective moved across his face. "Biology is not the same as fatherhood." The words settled deep. Emily knew the children had been conceived before the divorce, before the courthouse, before the silver ring. That truth was complicated, and the world would try to make it uglier than it had to be. Ryan would use it. Vanessa would twist it. Attorneys would sharpen it into questions. But in that dim room, with 2 heartbeats filling the silence, Emily understood something no letter from Ryan could change. These babies were not proof that Ryan had been right to want a family. They were proof that he had abandoned one before he knew it existed. Over the next few days, Nathan became even more impossible. He bought prenatal vitamins after comparing 3 brands like he was selecting surgical equipment. He replaced Emily's coffee with ginger tea and pretended not to notice when she made a face at it. He printed a pregnancy nutrition guide and crossed out anything he considered poorly sourced. When Emily said he was turning pregnancy into a hospital protocol, he replied, "Pregnancy deserves better organization than most hospitals." She laughed more than she meant to. It startled her every time. Grief still came in waves, but now there were moments between them. Small ones. Nathan washing a mug without being asked. Monica slipping Emily extra crackers. Linda from patient advocacy crying quietly when Emily told her about the twins. The blue blanket folded neatly at the foot of the bed. The ultrasound image tucked inside Emily's medical folder because she did not yet own a frame. One afternoon, as Emily left the obstetrics wing after another appointment, she paused near the elevator to adjust her scarf. She did not see Ryan until he said her name. He was standing 10 feet away in a navy coat, clean-shaven, handsome in the polished way that had once made her feel chosen. Vanessa was not with him. For a second, neither of them moved. Then his eyes dropped to the folder in her hands, to the appointment label visible on the corner, to the place where her hand had instinctively moved over her stomach. His face changed. Confusion first, then calculation, then something that looked almost like fear. "Emily," he said slowly, "why are you in the maternity wing?" She could have lied. She could have walked past him. She could have let Nathan handle it, because Nathan had just stepped out of the hallway behind her, silent as a closing door. But Emily was tired of being managed by other people's fear. She lifted her chin. Because the diagnosis was wrong. Ryan stared at her stomach again, and the color drained from his face. Are you? Emily did not answer. She did not need to. The truth had already entered the space between them and taken all the air with it. Nathan moved to her side, not touching her, not speaking for her, simply standing there. Ryan saw him. Then he saw the silver ring on Emily's hand. His mouth opened, but no words came out. For the first time since the kitchen table, Ryan Miller looked like a man watching the future he had thrown away walk past him in someone else's protection. Emily stepped into the elevator. Nathan followed. As the doors began to close, Ryan finally found his voice. Emily, wait. She met his eyes through the narrowing gap. There had been a time when that voice could have turned her around. That time was gone. The elevator doors closed before he could ask the question that would haunt him all night. Whether the children were his. Whether the woman he had left was carrying the family he claimed he wanted. Whether the worst mistake of his life had already begun growing in the silence he abandoned. Ryan did not sleep that night. By morning, he had called 3 people at St. Augustine Hospital, left 2 messages for Dr. Pierce, and driven past the residence building twice before realizing how desperate that made him look. The image of Emily in the maternity wing would not leave him. Her hand over her stomach. Nathan Hayes beside her. The silver ring on her finger. Ryan had spent weeks telling himself Emily had fallen apart, that she had been unstable, that he had made a painful but necessary decision before her illness dragged them both under. Now every excuse sounded thinner than paper. At noon, Dr. Pierce finally returned his call, but the man who once spoke with smooth confidence now sounded irritated and afraid. Stop contacting me, Pierce said. Ryan gripped the steering wheel. Did you know her follow-up result was clear before I filed? There was silence on the line. Ryan's heart began to pound. Malcolm, answer me. You asked for my professional impression. I asked whether my wife was facing something serious. Your ex-wife. The correction landed like a slap. Ryan looked through the windshield at the hospital entrance, where people came and went carrying flowers, coffee, fear, hope. You told me the first report was enough to understand where this was going. Pierce lowered his voice. And Vanessa told you what she wanted you to hear. Ryan went completely still. What does Vanessa have to do with this? Pierce did not answer directly. The internal review is getting ugly. There are access logs, delayed releases, messages. I am not taking the fall for your domestic drama. The call ended. For several seconds, Ryan could not move. Then he opened the thread with Vanessa. He scrolled back through the messages from the week Emily was diagnosed. There it was, buried between ordinary lines about dinner and real estate listings. She is going to become a full-time patient, Ryan. You deserve a life before it is too late. Another message. Dr. Pierce said the second test will not change much. You need to act before guilt traps you. Ryan read it once, twice, a third time. He remembered Vanessa standing in his kitchen, wearing sympathy like perfume, telling him Emily would understand eventually. He remembered her hand on his arm when he said he felt cruel. He remembered wanting permission to be selfish and taking it from the nearest person willing to give it. By 3 o'clock, he was at St. Augustine, waiting near the maternity wing elevators with a face that looked older than it had a month ago. When Emily stepped out of her appointment, she stopped immediately. Nathan was beside her, carrying a folder and a bottle of water. Ryan hated the calm way the doctor stood there, not possessive, not dramatic, just present. Emily, Ryan said. His voice broke slightly on her name. Please, I need 5 minutes. Nathan looked at Emily. You do not owe him that. I know, she said. Then she turned back to Ryan. 5 minutes. Here. Not alone. Ryan nodded quickly, as if any condition was a gift. His eyes dropped to her stomach, then filled with something Emily had once dreamed of seeing there. Wonder. Regret. Fear. Is it true, he asked. Are you pregnant? Emily held the folder against her chest. Yes. Ryan closed his eyes. Mine. Nathan's expression hardened, but Emily lifted a hand slightly, stopping him without touching him. The babies were conceived before the divorce. Ryan covered his mouth, and for a moment he looked like a man watching his own house burn from the outside, holding the match and pretending he did not recognize it. Babies, he whispered. Emily's face did not soften. Twins. The word hit him harder than any accusation could have. He stepped back. then forward again. Emily, I did not know. Vanessa told me the second test would not matter. Pierce implied the same thing. I was scared. I thought I was losing the future I wanted. No, Emily said quietly. You thought I was no longer part of it. Ryan's eyes reddened. I made a mistake. You made a choice. I was manipulated. You were available to be manipulated. He flinched. Around them, hospital life continued, elevators opening, nurses passing, a family laughing softly near the vending machines. The ordinary sounds made the moment feel even sharper. Ryan lowered his voice. I left because I thought I could not handle watching you suffer. Emily stared at him. Then answer one question. Ryan looked up. Anything. Her hand rested protectively over her stomach. If the diagnosis had been real, if I had truly been sick, would you be standing here asking me to come back? The question emptied him. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. Emily watched the silence answer for him. Nathan did not move. He did not need to. Ryan whispered, I am sorry. I believe you are sorry for what you lost. That is not fair. Neither was signing my marriage away while I still had a hospital bracelet on my wrist. Ryan's shoulders dropped. Let me make it right. Please. I can be there for the babies. I can fix the house, the accounts, everything. I will tell Vanessa to leave. I will cooperate with the hospital review. Just do not shut me out. Emily looked at the man she had once trusted with every fragile part of her life. She did not hate him the way she expected to. Hatred would have meant he still owned a room inside her heart. What she felt now was grief with the locks changed. You can cooperate with the legal process, she said. You can answer for what you did. And when the time comes, the court can decide what role you have. But you do not get to walk back into my life because the ending changed. Ryan's face crumpled. Emily, I love you. Nathan's hand tightened around the folder, but he stayed silent. Emily looked at Ryan for a long moment, remembering the kitchen, the rain, the pen, Vanessa's smile, and the way Nathan had stood beside her when everyone else tried to make her doubt herself. You love the version of me that made your life easy, she said. Nathan protected the version of me who had nothing to give. Ryan looked at Nathan then, really looked at him, and understood that he was not facing a rival who had stolen his wife. He was facing the man who had stayed where he had left. Emily turned toward the elevator. Ryan reached out but stopped before touching her. Emily, please. She looked back once. The woman who would have begged you to stay is gone, Ryan. You divorced her. The elevator doors opened. Nathan stepped in beside her, not in front of her. As the doors closed, Ryan stood alone in the hallway, surrounded by the truth he had tried to outrun. And for the first time, he understood that begging could not rebuild what abandonment had destroyed. 3 months later, the hospital review ended quietly, the way powerful institutions prefer their apologies to sound. Dr. Malcolm Pierce resigned before the final report became public. St. Augustine sent Emily a formal letter admitting that her follow-up result had been delayed and that her original diagnosis had not been properly confirmed. Ryan cooperated only after his attorney told him silence would make everything worse. Vanessa disappeared from his life the moment blame became more expensive than charm. Emily read the hospital letter at the small kitchen table in the residence apartment, one hand resting over the gentle curve of her stomach. Nathan stood by the window, pretending not to watch her face. You were right, she said. About the file? About losing people who were willing to abandon me before they had the facts. Nathan looked down. I wish I had been wrong. Emily folded the letter carefully and placed it beside the first ultrasound photo. 2 tiny profiles. 2 impossible heartbeats. 2 futures Ryan had almost erased from her life before he even knew they existed. Later that evening, Ryan came to the hospital lobby with flowers she did not accept. He apologized again, softer this time, with less performance and more shame. Emily listened, not because he deserved it, but because she deserved to leave without carrying his voice inside her. When he asked if there was any chance for them, she looked through the glass doors at Nathan waiting, outside in the cold, holding her scarf because she had forgotten it upstairs. No, Emily said. I forgive the past enough to stop living in it. Ryan lowered his eyes, and this time, he did not beg. Winter faded into spring. Emily moved from the residence apartment into a quiet townhouse Nathan found near the hospital. He still called their marriage practical, still organized vitamins by weekday, still acted as if making her tea was a medical responsibility. But one night, as 2 heartbeats filled the ultrasound room again, Nathan took her hand without waiting for permission. Emily smiled through tears. She had once believed family meant someone who promised to stay forever. Now she knew better. Family was the person who stayed when forever became difficult. And just when Emily thought the last secret had finally surfaced, Linda from Patient Advocacy called with one more discovery. Her file had not been the only one placed on hold.